The moment she sat down, 3 minor species declared a state of emergency. Blux-17 had never been known for excitement. In fact, its official planetary slogan, hand-stitched onto every employee's welcome towel, read, "Stable, sterile, statistically boring." And that's exactly how the Intergalactic Bureau of Societal Normalcy liked it. Calm, predictable, paperwork-rich. So when an actual Homo sapiens, yes, from that Earth, arrived on platform 9B of the station, wearing what appeared to be pajamas and chewing something with the confidence of a cosmic apex predator, there was concern. Her name was Juno Tamerlane. No middle name. No known military clearance, just a diplomatic observer from a death world. Capital letters, bolded in red on every interstellar manual, and usually followed by the phrase, "Do not prod." Juno, for her part, said nothing. She didn't protest, didn't demand superior quarters. She simply strolled to the designated observation room, barefoot, and sat in the corner, legs crossed, silent, observing. And it was this silence that terrified everyone. You see, no one sits quietly on Blux-17, not even the janitorial staff. You have to fill out Form Q88 Alpha just to legally murmur introspectively. And here was a Deathworlder just being. This led to immediate escalation. The local quadrant director, a mollusk-like fellow named Entro Vulp, activated Protocol 19 Gamma, typically reserved for spontaneous black hole appearances and rogue philosophers. Meanwhile, 3 advisors drafted a list of acceptable topics of small talk in case the human became conversationally aggressive. The list included clouds, toast, and the emotional subtleties of sand. 2 security officers fainted. General Chatrug was summoned. The highest-ranking officer on Blux-17, known for his unnecessarily dramatic cape and a voice that sounded like wet gravel, attempting to lecture a microwave. He examined Juno from behind 3 protective barriers and whispered, "She's just sitting there." "Yes, General," said Entro Vulp, sweating in 17 glands, but with tremendous intensity. Hours passed. Juno scratched her head. This prompted the station to enter yellow alert. She yawned, or perhaps issued a war cry, and the reactor room prepared to self-destruct just in case. General Chatrug, in a bold display of leadership, declared the yawn to be strategic ambiguity at its most lethal and ordered full containment protocols. A robot was dispatched to offer her snacks. It exploded from sheer confusion when she asked for something not entirely synthetic. Later that day, during a closed-door emergency press briefing, which ironically was broadcast publicly by mistake, Chatrug attempted to calm the nerves of galactic citizens. "There is no reason to panic," he said, blinking unevenly. "The human has made no demands, issued no declarations, and eaten only half a granola bar. This suggests she is either very peaceful or preparing for something profound." This statement caused the Plupians of Sector 8K to engage in spontaneous strategic retreat by launching their own moon into the nearest sun, which helped no one but DID make the evening news. Back in room 9B, Juno was meditating. Possibly, or asleep. No one could tell. She emitted a sound that was either a sigh or a prophecy. When asked later, a witness described it as the kind of sound that makes you remember you left the stove on 5 planets ago. One intern suggested just asking her what she wanted. He was promptly promoted, then reassigned to a distant asteroid for suggesting excessive simplicity. And still, she sat, still, silent, like the eye of a storm that hadn't happened yet. By the 3rd day, entire species had revised their cultural definitions of threat. Previously, it had been something like sharp teeth or radioactive diplomacy. But now it was the look Juno gave a maintenance drone when it asked if she'd like her pillow fluffed. That look, neutral, blank, possibly even polite, triggered a crisis on the diplomatic channel, usually reserved for war declarations and sandwich miscommunications. Everyone expected Earthlings to shout, punch, or, at minimum, rant dramatically about taxes. But Juno Tamerlane had done none of that. Instead, she had become a statue with lungs, one that occasionally blinked. And this, not any battle cry, not a sudden invasion, was what finally broke the spirit of Block 17. Entro Vulp called another emergency roundtable. The table was, as always, round only in metaphor, because geometrically curved surfaces offended the bureaucrats. 17 alien specialists gathered to explain what they did not understand about the situation. "She's not doing anything," one shouted. "Exactly," replied another, "which is clearly a sophisticated tactic. I heard that on her planet, silence is a form of psychological warfare." "That's not true," hissed a voice from the back. "It's a form of meditation. Meditation is what the Drabians do before shedding their skin." "I think she's planning something," bellowed General Chitrug, pounding the table with a noise that registered on seismic sensors 3 moons away. To make things worse, Juno had started humming. No known melody. Just a slow, off-key tune that managed to sound both cheerful and vaguely threatening, like a children's song sung near a volcano. This new behavior caused the Block 17 Command Council to commission a team of xenolinguists, sound theorists, and 1 retired music teacher to analyze the audio. The only conclusion? She's definitely up to something, and that's when they made their first real mistake. They tried to talk to her. Not a hello, not a welcome to our humble floating bureaucratic coffin. No, they chose to deliver a prepared speech. A 28-minute address outlining the history of the station, its cultural regulations, and a 7-part footnote on chair safety. Delivered, of course, by General Chitrug, who considered brevity a form of surrender. Juno listened without blinking. Her silence, somehow, deepened. "Is she absorbing all of this?" Entro whispered, terrified. "I think she's judging our syntax," said the general, wiping his brow with a document marked, "Do not wipe with this." Finally, when the monologue reached its dramatic climax, a quote from an ancient Blux poet who once rhymed stability with ductility, Juno raised a single finger, and then she spoke. "I just want to know if there's coffee." The room froze. The air itself paused for interpretation. One delegate gasped so hard he inhaled his own translator device. The Bluxian ambassador, not knowing what coffee was, assumed it was a type of explosive and flung himself into the recycling chute for safety. Chitrug blinked. Twice. That was new. We can arrange that," he stammered, suddenly aware that her voice was calm. Too calm, like someone who'd already read the last page of the book and knew things. And then Juno smiled, a soft, polite smile. But to the alien council, used to species that displayed friendliness by baring teeth or secreting mild acid, this was tantamount to a declaration of psychic supremacy. Panic did not spread. It sprinted. Within 12 minutes, a petition was started to rename the station New Earth Embassy. Within 20, 2 species requested human representatives be sent to mediate their internal disputes, citing unparalleled diplomatic technique. No one had the courage to admit that the technique was sitting still, humming, and asking for coffee. And so it continued. Juno drank something that was probably not coffee, because the machine they found hadn't worked since the Glorbnax rebellion, and also smelled like regret. She sipped it anyway. Calm, contained, mysterious. It was unbearable. The decision to invite Juno Tamerlane to a formal diplomatic tea was made by a subcommittee dedicated to intercultural fluid-based interactions. Essentially, a group of aliens who drank things for a living. They meant well. The plan was simple. Provide a culturally neutral beverage, serve it in a non-confrontational temperature range, and open a discussion about coexistence, or, failing that, not being vaporized in the next hour. Unfortunately, they chose Vrul Blossom tea. Now, Vrul Blossom tea has many qualities. It's fragrant, visually appealing, and known across 7 systems for causing mild hallucinations in humans, particularly those from Deathworlds who don't metabolize space pollen well. It was not, by any stretch, suitable for diplomacy. The moment Juno took a sip, she blinked once, then stared directly at a ceremonial wall sculpture depicting the Treaty of 14 Claws, and said, quite clearly, "That squid is judging me." The tea committee panicked. No, that's art," someone shouted. "It's abstract. It has eyes." General Chatrug, who had been observing through a mirrored panel while eating something that resembled a pastry but screamed when bitten, leaned forward and whispered, "This is it. She's cracking." "She's hallucinating a political critique," gasped Entro Vulp. "That's a level 5 mental infiltration." What followed was a flurry of documentation so dense that 3 printers spontaneously combusted. Forms were filed, countersigned, and reviewed by the Intergalactic Ethics Bureau, an organization so slow-moving it still hadn't approved the wheel. Meanwhile, Juno sat calmly, staring at the squid statue and occasionally nodding as if receiving interdimensional stock tips. Chatrug convened another emergency strategy session, this time with a brand-new war table shaped like a wedge of despair. "We must redirect her attention," he ordered. "Get her to focus on something less squiddy." "No, like what?" "Diplomatic grievances." Entro flinched. "Sir, if we open that, we'll have to explain the great tax bracket incident of Sector 7K. "So be it. At least she'll be confused." So they prepared the official grievance dossier, which spanned 2 volumes, each heavier than the average Groxian. As the general launched into a reading, his voice as dry as a Martian biscuit, Juno slowly rotated her chair and looked him straight in the eye. "Are you apologizing?" Chatrug blinked. "I know," he said carefully. "I am outlining context. But you called my species cognitively limited. That's not context. That's insult wrapped in footnote." The room went silent. A technician dropped his headset. A translator wept. The tea committee collectively evacuated. "I misspoke," Chatrug muttered. Juno nodded. "So, apologize." And that, right there, is where intergalactic history hiccuped. A military commander of 37 campaigns, decorated by 2 empires and once knighted by mistake, was now being asked to apologize by a barefoot, humming, tea-drinking Deathworlder who had been on the station for less than a week and said fewer words than the average toast. He glanced around. No help came. Entro Vulp had vanished under the table, reportedly due to existential nausea. Chatrug cleared his throat. "If I have inadvertently offended you or your terrifying species," he said slowly, "then I express regret for the unintended consequences of my statement." "That's not an apology," said Juno, still calm, still deadly. He tried again. "I am sorry." The words dropped like asteroids into a still ocean. A wave of disbelief crashed across the station. Broadcast systems, which had accidentally remained online, transmitted the moment live to 4 neighboring systems. On at least 2 of them, statues were erected immediately, not of Juno, but of the stunned look on Chatrug's face. Juno took another sip of the tea, winced, and muttered, "Tastes like treason." Nobody laughed. They were too afraid. The comment wasn't meant for her ears. It wasn't even meant to be recorded, but someone with unusually clumsy tentacles, forgot to disable the Omni microphone in the Situation Room. And that's how General Chatrug's voice ended up echoing across 7 parsecs in crystalline, unedited, high-definition surround sound. "I just don't trust species that blink too little," he said, snorting, "or ones from Deathworlds. You never know if they're meditating or plotting your demise." There was laughter, forced, shaky, terrified laughter, the kind of laughter that says, "Please don't eat me for that opinion, but yes, let's all pretend it's funny so we can keep our jobs." The clip spread across the galactic network within the hour. It made the front page of the Interstellar Inquisitor, nestled between a scandal about illegal asteroid sculpting and an exposé on wormhole addiction. Several species debated whether blinking patterns constituted cultural slander. The Eurelians, who blink vertically and compulsively, declared the remark speciesist, rude, and neurologically insensitive. Juno didn't react immediately. She simply watched the broadcast in her room, sipping something that might have been broth or an industrial solvent. It was never confirmed, and raised a single eyebrow. No facial contortion, no outburst. Just that eyebrow, suspended, judging, ancient. The eyebrow became a symbol within hours. Artists sketched it, philosophers debated it. The cult of the brow was unofficially formed by 3 interns who had seen the footage and immediately renounced all forms of upper face neutrality. Meanwhile, General Ch'Trug tried damage control. His first strategy was denial. "I never said that," he insisted. Then someone played the recording. "Audio manipulation," he claimed. Then they showed him the video. "Cultural deepfake." They showed him 3 camera angles, a reaction shot and 1 slow-motion replay. Eventually he settled for a classic, taken out of context. The public didn't care. They wanted answers. They wanted blood. They wanted a Deathworlder who could give them a look that caused minor spiritual awakenings. The station's media liaison, a flustered blob named Run, begged Juno to comment. "Just a short statement," Run pleaded, his skin visibly sweating ink. "Anything at all." Juno thought for a long time. Then she said, "Blinking isn't dangerous, but assuming someone else's silence means safety? That's unfortunate." That was it. Just that. And the universe lost its collective mind. The phrase was dissected across academic institutions. Was it a threat, a warning, a metaphor, a coffee-related grievance? Nobody knew, but it sounded wise, which was far more dangerous than an open threat, because now she was officially mysterious. Ch'Trug's approval ratings collapsed. The Plupian Senate tabled a motion to declare him emotionally compromised. A group of diplomatic robots collectively filed for ethical reassignment, citing leadership instability and eyebrow-related stress. Back on Block 17, the general spiraled. "She's controlling the narrative," he muttered, pacing in a room lined with commendations he could no longer display without being mocked. "She hasn't lifted a finger, and already I'm the villain in a 12-system arc." Entrovolp tried to console him. "Perhaps a formal apology broadcast." "I've already apologized." "Yes," Entro nodded, "but you didn't mean it." And that's when Ch'Trug made his second real mistake. He decided to fight fire with fire. He called a press conference. No one advised it. Not even the station's AI, which briefly glitched, flashed the word "why" across every screen, and attempted to self-destruct out of second-hand embarrassment. But the general was committed. He stood before the interstellar press with a face made of granite and ego, and declared, "Humans are unpredictable, erratic, culturally unstable. They should not be given ambassadorial roles without extensive psychological vetting and a 15-month behavioral quarantine." His voice trembled only slightly on the word quarantine. It did not help that, mid-sentence, someone played a loop of Juno sipping tea and not blinking. The image haunted the background like an elegant curse. 3 systems immediately issued official rebukes. One minor faction crowned Juno voice of poise, and somewhere in the corner of the station, a small group of aliens gathered to re-watch the eyebrow footage and whisper, "She knows." There was no tactical report prepared for what came next, no contingency plan, no pre-approved reaction script, not even a pamphlet. Because no species, not even the paranoid Krell who had fire drills for diplomatic insults, had anticipated the strategic power of a single, deliberate human eyebrow lift. Juno did it again, not aggressively, not mockingly, just calmly. At precisely the moment General Chatrug, during yet another live transmission, attempted to clarify his remarks by comparing human emotional range to a box of unstable noodles. The eyebrow rose. Galactic silence followed. It lasted 3.7 seconds, which in political time is an eternity long enough for 3 resignations, 2 rebranding campaigns, and 1 accidental marriage proposal in the Trinix Parliament. Then the chaos began. Several military analysts issued immediate threat-level upgrades. One security AI short-circuited while trying to map hostile eyebrow kinetics onto known war protocols. The Blux 17 PR team collectively screamed into their datapads and filed for temporary existence leave. Worse, a clip of the eyebrow, isolated, looped, slowed down to 25 speed, hit the public feed with the title, "Deathworlder executes non-verbal obliteration." It received 40 million views in its first hour. Children imitated it, adults feared it. Politicians tried to mimic it and strained several facial muscles in the process. And still, Juno said nothing. She went back to her tea, still awful, still possibly toxic, and resumed her corner meditation with the serene smugness of someone who knew that half the galaxy now feared her upper facial expressions. General Chatrug was in freefall. "She's a master manipulator," he shouted during a closed-door meltdown that wasn't as closed-door as he thought. "She's turning my words against me without even speaking." Entro Volp, who had stopped blinking entirely, offered a soft suggestion. "Maybe we ignore her. Ignoring her is exactly what she wants. But she's baiting us. Her silence is aggressive. It's tactical apathy." The general began pacing with such force that his ceremonial cape caught fire from friction. 2 aides smothered the flames with an ethics handbook no one had ever opened. Meanwhile, Juno began a new routine: reading. She requested a selection of station-approved literature and then refused all of it, claiming she had no interest in instruction manuals disguised as novels. Instead, she sat with a handwritten notebook of unknown origin and occasionally underlined things. No one knew what. That made it worse. A rumor began. She was writing a speech. Something enormous. Something final. Something that would in one breath destroy Chatrug's credibility and possibly reboot diplomacy as a concept. Paranoia metastasized. A whisper network emerged across the station. Comms officers, janitors, supply managers, trading theories. Some believed Juno was a covert philosopher-warrior. Others insisted she was a living artifact of a pre-communication species. One particularly intense botanist claimed she wasn't human at all, but a plant-based life form mimicking humans out of spite. In the center of it all, Juno continued to sit and read and lift her eyebrow. The last straw came when she was spotted smirking. A smirk, not a full smile. Just a momentary curl of the lips, soft and knowing, like she'd just heard an inside joke the universe didn't get yet. Screenshots of the smirk circulated faster than emergency recalls. Someone declared it a declaration of moral superiority. Someone else tried to prove it mathematically. Both were invited to speak at interstellar conferences they did not attend, possibly out of fear. The Bluxian Diplomatic Center issued a formal statement titled, "On the Recent Developments in Human Facial Communication and Their Implications for Sector Stability." It contained 17 footnotes, no verbs, and concluded with, "We remain concerned." Juno never acknowledged the statement. She didn't need to. Her next eyebrow lift came precisely as Chatrug attempted a new metaphor about human unpredictability in circus animals. It was imperceptible to the untrained eye. But those who saw it, really saw it, felt something shift in their personal gravity. After that, even the weather control system refused to cooperate with the general. It began raining indoors. Coincidence? No one dared ask her. They gave her the floor. Not metaphorically. The station literally restructured a meeting chamber just to make sure Juno had her own designated square of floor, painted in neutral tones. without patterns that could be interpreted as microaggressions. It took 6 architects, 2 lawyers, and a philosophical AI working overtime to certify it as emotionally non-threatening. She stepped onto it without comment. Every camera on Block 617 turned to her, every transmission dish focused. An entire quadrant's worth of beings held their breath, not out of protocol, but because something in their instincts said this was about to matter. General Chatrug was present, though visibly weathered. The man who once barked orders through asteroid belts now sat hunched behind a nameplate recently altered to remove the title Supreme for public relations purposes. He looked like someone who'd spent the last 3 nights battling an abstract concept and lost. A delegate opened the session. "Citizen Juno Tamerlane," he said, voice high and crackling, "you have requested to speak in response to recent commentary made by station authorities regarding your species' nature and presence." She didn't nod. She didn't blink. She just looked at Chatrug. Then, finally, she spoke. "I never requested to speak," she said quietly. "I waited. You assumed." A ripple passed through the room. Someone gasped. A diplomat dropped their data tablet. Somewhere in the back, the station's cook whispered, "Oh no, she's going philosophical." Juno's eyes didn't leave the general. "You kept asking what I wanted, what I was doing, what my angle was, as if stillness is a weapon, as if peace is camouflage. You ever considered, maybe I was just tired?" Dead silence. "Maybe I sat down because I was exhausted from a planet that doesn't let people sit. And maybe I stayed quiet because the last time someone like me spoke, they were explained away by someone like you." Chatrug's jaw tensed. His translator glitched and emitted a low groan, as if even machines were uncomfortable. She stepped forward, just once. "I watched you try to control the story of me, with metaphors, with half apologies, with jokes about blinking. But the problem, General, is that I wasn't trying to be anything. You did all that on your own." The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They landed with the force of a collapsing ideology. One delegate began clapping out of reflex, then stopped. Another cleared his throat but said nothing. The tension didn't rise. It crystallized, dense, unmoving. Juno took a breath. "I'm not here to represent Earth. I don't have a flag. I don't care if anyone thinks I'm a threat. I'm just one woman who sat down." And then she turned her head ever so slightly, and the galaxy exploded around me. There it was, the sentence, the one that would be quoted, misquoted, turned into wall art, tattooed on the limbs of idealists and whispered at dinner tables across sectors. Chatrug opened his mouth, closed it. He looked down at the notes he'd written, filled with words like containment, public narrative, and optics. None of them helped him now. None of them could stand upright in the shadow of a woman who, with fewer than 24 sentences, had dismantled an entire cultural architecture. Then she did something unspeakably dangerous. She walked away, mid-meeting. No bow, no farewell. Just a slight nod to the room, and the soft sound of human footsteps echoing into history. One technician fainted. Another stood and clapped. Alone, but loudly. The station's central computer briefly tried to categorize the event as a formal declaration of rhetorical dominance, then rebooted itself to avoid responsibility. And Chatrug, he remained seated. He did not follow her. He did not speak. He simply stared at the space where she had stood and knew, somehow irreversibly, that he had lost. The announcement came with no warning. One moment, Block 17's central feed was looping a documentary on plankton-based architecture. The next, every screen blinked to the solemn, stiff face of General Chatrug. No music, no dramatic lighting, just him, seated, alone, and visibly aged by the weight of recent history. The background was a blank wall, grey, lifeless, safe, nothing to distract, nothing to hide behind. "This is being recorded," he muttered to no one in particular. "Yes," said a voice off-screen, unsure whether they were confirming or apologizing. Chatrug adjusted his posture, cleared his throat, then paused so long it triggered automatic buffering in 12 systems. He was staring directly at the camera, directly at everyone, and at no one. Mostly he was staring at the shadow of his own pride. "To the citizens of this station," he began, "and to any system that received unintended transmissions of my comments, I offer the following." Another pause. "Not for drama, for survival. I underestimated the human visitor, Juno Tamerlane. I misjudged her presence, misread her silence, and misrepresented her species. I spoke with arrogance, disguised as analysis. And now, publicly, I must correct that." His face twitched, just slightly, as if the words were burning holes in his molars. "She came in peace. I received her with suspicion. She remained silent. I responded with noise. She gave nothing, and I gave offense." Someone somewhere sneezed in sympathy, possibly a political rival. Chatrug shifted again, then exhaled the kind of sigh that gets filed in diplomatic archives for future case studies on emotional combustion. "I regret my remarks, fully. Not in the passive-aggressive way leaders do when they say mistakes were made while blaming shadows. I own the mistake, I made it, I said it, and I was wrong." For a moment, the entire station felt like it was holding its breath. "I am sorry," he added. Then, almost imperceptibly, he bowed his head. It wasn't deep. It wasn't elegant. It looked more like someone leaning forward to vomit a confession, but it counted, and just like that, the feed cut out. No applause, no follow-up, just silence. Which, as everyone now understood, was the deadliest statement of all. The reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. In one system, his approval ratings rose purely from pity. In another, he was nominated for an award titled Most Improved Humanoid. The Plupians, still unsure whether any of this was real or performance art, sent a fruit basket shaped like regret. Back on Bluck 17, chaos disguised itself as order. The comm center flooded with requests for interviews with Juno. Analysts scrambled to reinterpret her smirk, her posture, even the angle of her shoelaces during public appearances. Religious movements bloomed. One group claimed her silence cured insomnia. Another insisted she never actually spoke at all, and everything was psychic projection. Juno responded by not responding. She didn't make a statement. She didn't release a rebuttal. She didn't even correct the rumor that she once made a Plaxian diplomat weep by staring at his reflection too long. Instead, she did the one thing no one was prepared for. She remained exactly the same. She still sat in the same corner of the observation room, same posture, same mysterious aura of cosmic exhaustion. When asked directly if she had seen Chatrug's apology, she replied, "I saw it. He tried." And that was it. The comment was analyzed to death. Did he tried mean it was acceptable, a dismissal, a philosophical exploration of effort versus outcome? Did she mean he tried and failed, or tried, and that was enough? Scholars imploded. Chatrug, meanwhile, disappeared from public view for a while. Some said he went on a pilgrimage to a moon where no one could pronounce his name. Others claimed he'd taken up abstract gardening, a form of horticulture involving plants that may or may not exist. But what was certain, absolutely certain, was this. A Deathworlder had arrived on a diplomatic station. She hadn't made threats. She hadn't declared war. She hadn't lifted a weapon. She sat. She stared. She drank horrifying tea. And she made a galactic general apologize in front of everyone. No army, no force field, no speechwriters, just one human, one eyebrow, and one hell of a silence. After the apology, everything got louder. News feeds screamed with analysis. Diplomats scrambled to rewrite handbooks. Entire universities created emergency courses in non-verbal negotiation, the Tamerlane method. One overfunded think tank launched a project to simulate her thought patterns using 16 quantum processors and a psychic goat. It failed spectacularly, and yet Juno said nothing. She didn't capitalize on the moment, didn't demand reparations, didn't even ask for better tea. She simply returned to her chair, her usual one, with the cushion that was technically against uniform code, but no one dared remove, and resumed doing what she had done from the beginning. She sat, she observed, and she radiated the kind of silence that had gravity, that more than anything else made people lose sleep. If she had yelled, they could have processed it, filed a report, analyzed the tone, countered the rhetoric. But this unbothered void of noise was intolerable. It left room for interpretation, for fear, for imagination. General Chitrug reappeared only once, briefly, no cape, no grand speeches. Just a low-profile stroll across the station's gardens, where he paused before a recently planted shrub and saluted it. No one asked why. Everyone assumed it meant something. Juno didn't look up. Rumors began again. She's planning something. She's communicating telepathically. She's waiting for a signal. She's already won. Because the silence wasn't passive anymore. It felt pointed, strategic. She wasn't being quiet, she was holding court. When a trade delegation from the Cerulean dynasty passed through the station, they requested a 5-minute audience with her. She didn't speak, she didn't nod, she didn't even acknowledge them. After 3 minutes of unbearable stillness, the lead diplomat bowed and left the room in tears. The next day, their empire signed a non-aggression pact with Earth. No terms, just signatures. That was the moment everything snapped. "What does she want?" shrieked the station's morale officer, who had not slept in 4 days and had started speaking exclusively in interpretive haikus. "She must want something," insisted the PR department, which had recently converted the entire break room into a shrine to minimalism. Psychological reports came back inconclusive. One AI therapist claimed her behavior could be classified as cosmic-level indifference. Another simply disconnected itself and filed for digital reincarnation. Even Entro Vulp, who had once prided himself on being unflappable, was found hiding behind a cargo crate muttering, "The silence is recursive. It's folding in on itself. It's a loop." But Juno, she just sat. Every now and then, someone would enter the observation room and try to make conversation. She'd nod, or not. Sometimes she'd blink. One time she hummed. No one ever asked her to clarify. The silence became an event, a phenomenon, a statement. And then, just when the station had built an entire mythology around her non-responsiveness, when Tamerlane tolerance tests became standard in diplomatic training and cultures began including eyebrow etiquette in their primary school curricula, she stood up. It was sudden, without cause, without warning. She rose from her chair, stretched just once, and picked up the same ratty notebook she'd always kept near her. Everyone froze. Security feeds switched angles. Comms buzzed. A dozen stations across the quadrant stopped transmitting. Even the trash compactors held still. Juno walked to the nearest exit, turned and said, "You should be more careful with silence. It tends to echo." Then she left, just like that. No final confrontation, no farewell, no drama. Just a quiet exit from the place that had spent weeks trying to define her. They didn't follow. They couldn't. In her absence, a statue was never built. A song was never written. But across thousands of systems, her legacy grew, not as a hero, not as a diplomat, not even as a human, but as the anomaly no one could categorize. And somewhere on some far-off transport, Juno Tamerlane probably sat in another corner with another cup of terrible tea, flipping through her notebook and thinking, "I told them I just wanted coffee."